Okay, the last problem that we have for Chapter 2 is S22. S22 deals with looking at actual financial statements, so we're looking at excerpts of actual financial statements between Home Depot and Lowe's. Those are our two comparison companies here. The directions or the requirements on S22 for the first one indicates use the company's balance sheet to determine the amounts in the accounting equation. So let's again go to the website. Again, this is the same website that we used in Chapter 1. Okay, I've gone and clicked on the student edition. You can see that it's reported up here, student edition. Okay, it's listed out. After you selected on student edition, in order to pull up the financial statements, you click on Home Depot here and select Home Depot, and then you click on Lowe's and also select that. If you want to open up two tabs, you can hold down Control and select the PDF document, and it'll open it up in a second tab. If you just keep clicking it, it might keep replacing which tab you're looking at when you try to open up the two documents. So if you want to open up two, just hold down Control and click the PDF, and that should open it up in a separate tab. Okay, once we've got the financial statements open, so here we've got Lowe's and here we've got Home Depot, we can then start to look at what it's asking us to do. The first requirement says using that balance sheet, it wants us to determine the accounting equation and determine who has the larger total assets. So let's scroll down. We're going to be using the balance sheet the entire time here on these companies. So we're going to scroll down to the balance sheet for Lowe's. Okay, and we get consolidated balance sheet listed out here. We've got assets, liabilities, and stockholders' equity, etc., etc. Okay, and then let's do the same for Home Depot so that we can start to make some comparisons. All right, and now we're at the Home Depot balance sheet. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is using our accounting equation, we've got to determine who has the greater total assets. Well, we can go down and find total assets by simply going to the total assets line. Look at here, we've got total assets listed out here for 2011, 40, and this is in the millions again. Okay, so we've got that listed out here for Home Depot and listed out here, 2011 again, here, total assets over here for Lowe's, okay? If we want to put this in the accounting equation, then I've typed this out for us over here. We want to simply just say Lowe's has total assets of 33 billion here, and we can confirm that by going over here again, and we can see Lowe's got the 33 billion. And we set that equal to the total liabilities here. Let's scroll over and find Lowe's total liabilities. Total liabilities, if we go down to here, bring this up a little bit further to the top here. Okay. Total liabilities listed out here for Lowe's, 15 billion. And total stockholders' equity, okay, liabilities, stockholders' equity at 18 billion. Again, looking at here, 18 billion. Notice how total assets is equal to the total liabilities in the stockholders' equity over here. All right, that's Lowe's. Let's now go to Home Depot. Again, we've got total assets listed out right over here. If we scroll down a little bit, we should be able to find total liabilities and stockholders' equity. Oops, went a little bit too far. Okay. Total liabilities listed out here, 21 billion. And then total stockholders' equity here, given to us 18. So we'll drop those numbers in as well. And we set the 40 equal to the 21 plus the 18, okay? It asks us to determine which one has the higher total assets based upon the accounting equation. Well, just by looking at total assets, we can determine that. Home Depot has a larger total assets, 40 compared to the 33 over here. Requirement number 2 asked us, does Lowe's have more or less current liabilities than Home Depot at the end of January 2011, and which one has the larger current ratio? Well, again, since we're on Home Depot, let's go ahead and look and see how much Home Depot has. For total current liabilities, we have listed out here's current liabilities. We get the subtotal over here. So going over here, we've got the 10 billion, and let's look at Lowe's. Lowe's for total current liabilities, we have listed over here 7. So going back to our solution over here, let me scroll that down just a little bit here so you can see better. Okay. Lowe's current liability is $7 billion, whereas Home Depot is 10. So Lowe's has the less current liabilities. When we determine current ratio, we simply take current assets divided by current liabilities here, and the same thing on the Lowe's side. So if we wanted to scroll over, and I'll just do one example, going back over to Lowe's, our total current assets is given to us up here. So we've got current assets, scroll down to the total here, 9.9. Notice that we already said that total current liabilities over here is 7. So go over to the current ratio. We've taken current assets and divided by current liabilities. And we've done the same thing for Home Depot. The current ratio indicates whether or not you have enough current assets, which are assets that are going to be used within the year, to pay off your current liabilities, and current liabilities are going to become due within a year. So do you have enough assets that you can use within this year to pay off your current liabilities that are coming due within this year, okay? The higher the current ratio, the more liquid the company is said to be, the better it's able to meet its upcoming debt. So Home Depot has a current ratio of 1.3, whereas Lowe's has a current ratio of 1.4. So the current ratio on Lowe's is slightly better than what Home Depot has. On requirement number 3, it says on the balance sheet, Lowe's reports inventory at $8 billion. Does this amount represent its expecting selling price? Why or why not? We talked about in Chapter 2 the cost principle, where items are reported on the financial statements at the agreed upon price. Inventory meets the cost principle. Inventory is reported on the balance sheet at cost, not selling price, okay? That's going to be something that we're going to hit home on in Chapter 7. So just be familiar with it now. But inventory needs to be reported at cost. There is a caveat to that in Chapter 7. We'll talk about the rule of lower of cost or market. But for right now, you can think of inventory being reported at cost, not selling price, okay? The requirement number 4 says, has financing from Lowe's investment in assets primarily come from liabilities or stockholders' equity at January 28, 2011. Thinking back to Chapter 1, what does this mean about risk relative to those investing in Home Depot? Okay, well, let's look at our financing real quick. If we go to Lowe's, and we want to find out how the financing has come about, okay, we look at total liabilities here. Total liabilities was $15 billion, and total shareholders' equity here is $18 billion, which means more of the financing is coming from shareholders' equity. In that sense, thinking back to Chapter 1, the risk associated with debt is that it has a constant payment requirement, okay? Debt you have to pay whether or not you sell something. Whether or not your business does well or not, you still have to make your principal and interest payments as they come due. Whereas equity financing does not have a set payment that you have to meet. You can pay dividends, but that's a decision that's made by the board of directors. It is not something that absolutely has to be paid. Now, there's an argument that could be made where you say that if once a company starts paying dividends, if they stop paying dividends, or if they decrease their amount of dividends, that sends a signal to the market saying that the company's not doing as well. But excluding that argument aside, equity financing does not have a specific requirement that has to be made for payment every single month or every single quarter or every single year, whereas debt has to be paid, so it's said to be a little bit more risky, okay? So scrolling down there, I've written a narrative answer for you that you can kind of review. But the more the company has in assets and the less it has in liabilities, the more likely the company will be able to pay the creditors' owes, simply because it has less of a requirement to pay those, okay? So Lowe's is said to have a slightly more financing in equity versus in liabilities, okay? When we scroll down, this is becoming more abundantly clear when we look at the debt to asset ratio, okay? We can take total liabilities and divide them by total assets, and this will show us a percentage of how much of our assets is financed by debt, okay? Rather than just looking at simple numbers, we can actually say, let's compare that to the total number of assets, right? Because a company may take on a small amount of debt, but also have a small amount of assets associated with that. And you couldn't really compare just the dollar value of debt to one company to the next. It's more meaningful to make a comparison via a ratio. So if we do that with Lowe's and Home Depot, we find that Home Depot finances more of its assets by debt than it does equity via this comparison. Look, that over half of its assets is financed by debt, whereas Lowe's finances less than half of its assets by debt. So we find out that Lowe's has a slightly less risky financing strategy than does Home Depot. And these should be the requirements for S22. Please let me know if you have any questions.